What's up, guys? Welcome back here, the whole 9 yards on a Monday afternoon. Well, actually, I guess it's technically morning. It's 9:49 here. I kind of just woke up. I was going to make a video last night about the NBA playoff games. I was waiting for Clippers-Mavs to finish up. I kind of fell asleep, though, there at the end when the Clippers were, they had the game clearly secured. There's been a few games since me and Brandon last recorded. Brandon's been busy. He's had some stuff recently, so we just haven't been able to upload. But yeah, I'm back here. I'm going to just talk about some of the games recently that have happened. I guess I'll start with last night's game and the Clippers and Mavericks. And since we last recorded, the Mavericks, I want to say, went up 2-0, and people were saying the series is over. And, I was kind of in that camp, but I was also a guy who really liked the Clippers going into the playoffs this year. And honestly, they've, proven me, or they've at least showed why, the believers in this team in the beginning, why they were believers. Kawhi has been unstoppable. Kawhi is, the first two games of the series, everybody said, Luka's the best player in the series. And that was true. That was definitely true. And Luka might still be the best player in the series. You can debate it, but I still think Kawhi is definitely, he's up there. He's at least in that conversation to be the best player in the series, overall. And Paul George is, he was a guy that the past however many seasons, it was, pandemic P, playoff P, just he was a garbage in the playoffs compared to the regular season. And games 3 and 4, he's proven that, or he's at least starting to show that he's not going to be that playoff pandemic P type of guy. The first couple games, he kind of struggled. He wasn't nearly as bad as he was in, last year's playoffs, but this year he's proven that he can be the number 2 on a championship winning team at least in games 3 and 4. And he wasn't horrible in games 1 and 2. He definitely struggled, but in games 3 and 4, he's proven that he can. If he plays like this the rest of the playoffs, they're going to win this series, and they're probably going to at least get to the conference finals. And depending on who's there to face them, they might go to the finals and they might win it. I mean, I was we never actually technically picked a winner at the play-in tournament, but if you made me pick a winner right now of the championship, the Clippers would be up there for me. It just depends on, I think they're going to win this series. I really do think they're going to beat the Mavericks. I don't think, the media overreacts too much. Right now, I think people are kind of, on that Clippers wave because the Clippers just won games 3 and 4. They were on the Mavericks waves initially when Mavericks won game 1 and 2. I think it's going to be a close series. I think it probably goes 7. I like the Clippers to win. I just think that, it's a 3-game series. They have 2 games at home. The Mavericks, have only 1 game at home. So that's a huge advantage for them. And I think the Clippers have, if they don't have the best player in the series, if you want to say that's Luka, that's fine. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but they have the second and third best players. And after that, it's a huge drop. And I don't know who you want to say is the 4th best player in the series, but it's a huge drop after Paul George there at 3. And you can easily make the argument that if you wanted to, Kawhi is the best player in the series. So it's going to be tough for the Mavericks to win. I just think that if Luka doesn't go ham, which he still goes ham, they still don't guarantee themselves a win if Luka goes ham. If Kawhi plays insane, the Clippers basically win. I mean, as long as Paul George doesn't play atrociously and Kawhi has a great game, they're just a better talented team. I don't know, Lou's not a great coach, so, but I think the Clippers just have so much talent that if they play, if they just play all right for their standards, I think they're going to come out of that series. But Luka's been insane. I think the Mavericks need more. They just need more. They need more pieces. Kristaps has just not been good. When we look back at that trade, the Mavericks and Knicks trade for Kristaps, I don't think you can even say there was a winner in that trade. The Mavericks haven't really gotten much out of KP. He's just been pretty injury prone. As I feel like it's easy to, it was easy to kind of guess he'd be injury prone. But I still think initially at the time I thought it was a good trade for the Mavericks. I don't know if it's a bad trade for the Mavericks. I mean, you really didn't give up, you didn't really give up much to get him. I thought at the time it was a steal, but Kristaps just hasn't done much. He hasn't looked great on the court, especially the series. He just hasn't been good. He's one of those guys that's super tall and doesn't really like to rebound. He just kind of likes to sit there and shoot some 3-pointers, which is, good, but he just hasn't been good. So it'll be interesting to see who if the Clippers win, they'll play the Jazz. We'll see how that turns out. Assuming Utah wins that series. I like the Clippers to beat Utah. I like Utah, but I don't think they're a 1 seed. I don't think they're a legitimate 1 seed. If you made me rank them off of overall, best teams to worst teams, I think they're probably, they kind of belong as a 5 seed or 4 seed. And I think the Clippers kind of belong as a 3 or 2 seed. So I like the Clippers in that series, and I think the Clippers are going to be well rested and ready to go in that conference finals. As if, let's just say it's the Lakers, they have a tough road. I mean, the Lakers have a much tougher road to the conference finals than the Clippers. I mean, they have to face the Suns. Who knows if they win? Let's just say they win in this scenario. The Lakers are going to win that, and they're going to play in the next round. They're either going to have to play the Trailblazers and the Nuggets. That's tough. I mean, the Nuggets don't have Jamal Murray, but those are going to be hard-fought games. I mean, Jokic is this year's MVP. He's still insane. That Nuggets team is still pretty good without Murray. I mean, you have MPJ, you've got other pieces there, good role players, a good coach in Malone. Like he was a coach of the year candidate before the year started. I mean, he's not going to win it, but this year, but he was initially. The Trailblazers, I mean, they're not a super talented team either, but if you can get that beginning of the year McCollum, obviously Dame is probably a top 10 player. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that he's at least in that discussion for top 10. Whenever you're playing against a top 10 player and the Trailblazers are always a tough out in the playoffs. It's pretty tough to, get rid of the Blazers easily. Sometimes, they will lose in 5 games, but for the most part, they're a tough out. They're a tough, gritty team they're going to make you earn it. So I think the Clippers are going to be more well rested in that conference finals, and that might give them an advantage. It might not. We'll see what happens. Typically, maybe, who knows? We'll see what happens. Maybe they're rusty out the gate. If they can beat the Jazz in 5 and the Lakers have to go again a 7-game series against the Sun and then a 6 or 7-game series against the Nuggets, that's tough. I mean, that's tough, right? Looking at other games that happened yesterday, I mean, the Nets and Celtics happened yesterday. It was, the Celtics just can't do much when your 3 biggest stars and combined for 104 points, I think it was. There's not much you can do. Tatum's a great player, right? But there's not much. There really isn't much he can do. This team just doesn't have anything around it. And, I like Smart. I like some pieces, but you need more. Obviously, not having Jaylen Brown really, really does stink there. I'm curious how the Celtics would look if they did have Jaylen Brown. Would they be competing more so in these games? Would they have taken a game from the Nets? Could it be 2-2 if Jaylen Brown was playing? Probably not. It'd probably still be 3-1, but it'd be super interesting because, I mean, Jaylen Brown's a guy who can play defense. He plays really well in transition. He can still shoot the ball. He's great on offense, too, so I would love to see Jaylen Brown in this series, but it's unfortunate. The Nets are probably going to win that in 5 now. What's important from this series to take away, just because it's not really a competitive series, is, I mean, this is like some of the most that we've seen the Nets big 3 play together. I mean, they only played, single-digit games in the regular season together, so this is kind of the most we're going to get, and I think they look pretty good. They look pretty good. And I know that's, what does that even mean, but it's... I'm curious to see how they match up against the Bucks. Are they gonna? I don't know. And if you made me pick between the Nets and the Bucks right now, I don't know who I'd go with. I love the Bucks. I mean, how can you not have confidence in the Bucks after they lose in a pretty bad fashion against the Heat last year? They were the team in the East. They were really kind of riding that Giannis hype still. 2 straight MVPs, he was, you're riding that Giannis hype, and you go out and lose to the Heat in the bubble, who are a 5 seed. So it's kind of embarrassing, honestly. And to come back this year and sweep them in the fashion that they did, just absolutely embarrassing them, making Tyler Hero look horrible. Jimmy Butler looked horrible. Bam Adebayo looked not nearly as good as he did in the bubble. It was a great show. It was a great performance for the Bucks, and I'll be rooting for the Bucks. I'll definitely be rooting for the Bucks next round. I don't want to pick a series winner just yet. I'll probably wait for when Brandon gets back. He'll be back probably, I don't even know when we're going to record next, but I'm sure he'll be back, soon. He just has, I don't even know, he's just busy, So, but I guess other games that kind of happened, obviously a big one, Suns-Lakers. AD got injured. And, that really hurts the Lakers championship odds. Not only did the Suns win, but AD gets injured in that game, and even worse, Chris Paul looks to be back as far as I'm aware or concerned. He looked a lot better. I mean, last night he played 32 minutes, 18 points, 9 assists, 3 rebounds, and he actually looks like he can shoot the ball now. I mean, when he was injured, his shoulder he couldn't shoot the ball. I mean, you had to watch it. He wasn't good. He looked a lot better last night, and AD, I want to say he got injured in like the third-ish quarter. I want to say it was like after halftime, third quarter, he got injured, and he might be out for game 5. I don't know if they've put out more stuff, if there's any updates on his game 5 status, but it doesn't seem like they have put out more on on his Game 5 status, but I still believe he's like questionable for that game. Day to day. He'll probably play. Game 5, but is he going to be 100%? I don't know. He hasn't really stopped DeAndre Ayton. Ayton's still been a guy that has been pretty productive. Last night he put up 14 points, 17 rebounds. He's getting a lot of boards. If AD is not 100%, I clearly don't have as much confidence in them winning the series as they. Holy crap, I'm stuttering. I don't have as much confidence in the Lakers winning the series with AD injured, and that's, obviously. Do I still think they're going to win the series with... If they have like a 60% AD, I still think they win the series. I still think AD at 60% is... Is he the third best player in the series at 60%? I think he's probably not. I think he's probably the fourth, but if he can be 60%, I think they have a good chance in the series. If not, I think the Suns might win. It's a 3-game series. The Suns have 2 games at home. The Lakers only have 1. Anything can really happen in 3 games. It's going to be interesting. I don't know. I think I'm kind of rooting for the Suns, but at the same time, I think the Lakers out of the West probably have the best chance to beat the Nets. And, as far as a personal basketball NBA fan, I don't want the Nets to win the finals. I'm kind of done with the whole super team thing. I'm not a KD fan. I know it's a dumb grudge to hold, but I just think he kind of ruined the NBA for a while, and I think he's a bit of a snake, and I know that's kind of just I know that's an outdated kind of thought that he's a snake or whatever. I don't know that everyone thinks that now, but I don't like KD. I've never been a big KD guy, especially after he went to the Warriors, and, am I salty he didn't go to the Celtics in that free agency because they were, out of the 3 teams, they were one of the teams? No, not really. I just thought going to Golden State was just kind of just a loser move, and if he had gone to OKC, back to OKC, I'd still probably be, I don't know if I'd be like a fan. I never was a huge KD guy, but yeah, there's no doubt he's still the second best player in the NBA, or at least, he's one of those guys. So, and I don't like Kyrie. I think that's, fairly obvious. I don't think it's very easy to not like Kyrie. And especially as a Boston fan, I can pull up multiple clips of him saying he's planning on resigning back. There was that one, time on the court when he said he wanted to sign back. There's been multiple press conferences where he said he wanted to come back. This is the place for him and all that. And then for him to leave and, go to the Nets and the whole burning the sage thing, I think it was, on the TD Garden. And actually last game he stepped on the Celtics logo, which I'm not like that's so disrespectful. I'm not one of those guys. I'm not going to make a fuss out of it, but I just don't like Kyrie. I think he's a diva. I think he's kind of like the OBJ of basketball. I don't think that's a bad, I think that's a bad analogy or metaphor there. He's super talented. OBJ is a top 10 receiver, maybe even higher when he's 100% and concentrated, ready to go. He at least has been a top 5, top 3 guy in the league before. I think OBJ can be that, and I think Kyrie can be a top 2 point guard, and I think he can be a top 15, 13-ish. I think he can be like top 12 when healthy and when fully ready to go. He showed he can be a number 2 on a championship winning team, so he's one of those guys, but I'm just not a big fan. And Harden, I think Harden out of those 3 I like the most, but even Harden, I'm not a huge Harden guy just because in the past his playoff struggles, and I've definitely hated on him. As an NBA fan, I still like Harden, but as a analyst or whatever, I think he has holes in his game. At least his Rockets version of himself definitely had multiple holes. He's looking much more like a distributor on the Nets. I think this Nets team looks pretty good offensively. It's going to come down to defense for this team, I think. The offense is not a question. Durant had 42 points last night. Kyrie had 39, and Harden had 23 points and 18 assists. The offense is going to be there regardless, unless all 3 of your stars play horrible, which is technically possible, but really not going to happen probably, because you have a second best player in the league in Durant, a top 5 in Harden probably, and a top 20 in Kyrie. At least in the public sides, that's probably where they have them. It's going to be hard for them 3 to not play well. And even if they don't play well, there's still the slim odds that, one of your role players steps up and has a 20 plus point night. So offensively, it's going to be there. I don't see it not being there. It's defensively. That's the question. I would have loved this team much more if they had a way to keep Jared Allen during that Harden trade. I don't know if there was a way for them to keep Allen. I would have loved it though, just because and then this is the problem with DeAndre Jordan. I don't know if they traded Allen because they had Jordan, but obviously, Jordan's a DNP guy, basically. He's a guy that doesn't really play. He's just not good. He's not a defensive player of the year candidate like he used to be. He's just garbage. If you had Allen, you kind of have that big guy who could, you're not going to stop Embiid. You're not going to, he's not a Rudy Gobert. He's not going to turn a team into a top 3 defensive team just by himself. But if this team could just be average defensively, it's a team that, they're basically on that Warriors level of good where it's like, why even watch the playoffs? Like, that's how good they would be. They might be that still. I mean, we'll have to see how the playoffs unfold. I don't think that's, super, out of the realm of possibility where this Nets team is basically just like almost as good as that Warriors team to the point where it's like, okay, don't watch the playoffs. The Lakers are still going to be a really good team and the Clippers are too. So I still think the finals at least will be worth watching. But, yeah, we'll see. As far as, Nets versus Bucks, I kind of talked about it, but I don't want to pick a winner yet, but I'll be rooting for the Bucks. I just think that, I don't know, I don't like the Nets. I'm not a huge Bucks fan either, but I'd like to see Giannis have a little bit of playoff success. I think that'd be interesting. I think that'd be good for the league. They need a replacement for LeBron because, LeBron, he's 36-ish years old or something like that. His play isn't necessarily on the decline, but I think his sustainability and his injury history is definitely on the decline here, and the more and more he gets injured, the longer and longer those injuries last, and he's just not able to be he's not going to be an 82 game type of year, games played in a year type of guy. He's not going to be a guy that competes for MVPs, I don't think, anymore, just because he's not going to play the raw games, I would assume. He's a guy that, he's going to need a little bit of help in the regular season, but when you get in those playoffs and he has the ability to just kind of play 40 minutes a night and carry that team and be aggressive LeBron, he's still going to be great. As far as LeBron is concerned in these Lakers and Suns games, he's been a little bit passive for me. Game 1, they lost game 1, obviously. He was pretty passive. He was a passive LeBron, and, that made sense, and I was all right with it because in the game 1s, historically, he's been a pretty passive guy. He's been a guy that's all right with kind of just feeling out things and see how they go. But I was expecting a much more LeBron pass game, much more aggressive LeBron post game 1. Last game, he kind of opened up basically the first 3 quarters until AD got hurt as a pretty passive guy, kind of looking to get shooters open, which is good. It's good. But he just wasn't playing aggressive. He wasn't trying to get to the hoop nearly as much as he probably should have. And he fixed that in the fourth quarter. He was much more aggressive, right? He was, getting to the hoop, not just looking to dish and get other people open, but looking to get himself good looks. It was just a little bit too little, too late type of scenario. They were just too far behind. AD had gotten hurt. Chris Paul had a pretty solid game, so it was kind of over at that point. But yeah, other games that kind of happened, I guess Hawks, Knicks, we'll talk about it. Brandon's not here as a Knicks fan, which is kind of unfortunate, but the Knicks do fall down 3-1 against the Hawks, and I think if this series it's been interesting. I think it's a really good series for the league. I mean, almost out of all these series, this is a series where there's really no championship contender in them. And if we look at all the other series, right, like from the games yesterday, Clippers, Mavericks, they have a championship contender. Nets, Celtics, championship contender. Suns, Lakers, they have a championship contender. Knicks, Hawks out of the games yesterday. The only game where they didn't have a legitimate championship winner contender. But this series is arguably the most fascinating and best for the league because the Knicks, obviously, they had that huge playoff drought. They haven't really been contenders recently since probably 2013, and they weren't even really contenders. They were just a solid team with Carmelo, Stoudemire, others I'm forgetting about. But yeah, the Knicks fall down 3-1, and I think this series is easily summarized by just looking at the 2 best players in this series, at least going into it, the expectation of those 2 best players, Trae Young of the Hawks and Julius Randle of the Knicks. Julius Randle just hasn't been good this series. The Hawks game plan for him, and for whatever reason, Randle hasn't been able to produce, whether it be double teams. He just hasn't been able to shoot well. He just hasn't done anything really well at all. And the complete opposite has happened for the Hawks. Thibodeau just hasn't game planned for Trae Young. They're not double teaming him. This game they didn't really double team him all that much, if at all. I'm just trying to remember. I don't think they double teamed him really at all. And Trae Young's been able to create shots, create foul attempts, create shots for other people. He was 27 points, 9 assists last night. Young's criticisms before this series and I guess before this year was He's a guy that's going to get you a lot of points, but he's bad, horrible defensively, and he doesn't make other people better. He doesn't play make as a point guard, which is a big problem. This year, he's answered those criticisms, especially in the series. He's looked to get other people open, and he's making people around him better, which he wasn't doing before. And I think that's kind of what the firing of Lloyd Pierce has kind of unlocked for this Hawks team. It's unlocked a much more versatile Trae Young, where he doesn't have to do everything. He doesn't have to take, a million shots a game. He can look to get other people open. He can look to get John Collins open. He can look to get Gallinari shots, look to get Herter open threes. So, yeah, I just think that this series can be summarized, and the coaching of the Hawks to shut down Randle has been so much better than the coaching of Thibodeau and the Knicks to shut down Trae Young. That's kind of why the Hawks are up 3-1. If Randle was playing as good as he had been in the regular season, or as good as Trae Young's playing now, this would probably be a 2-2 series, or at least it'd be much more competitive. And it looks like the Hawks have this series in the bag. Now, does it really matter in the grand scheme of things? No, none of these teams are going to compete, but I would have liked, I hope the series goes 7. I think it's good for the league for the Knicks to be great, and I hope Randle plays well. Because how can you not be a fan of one of those, Cinderella story, most improved player type of guys? How can you not be a fan of a guy like that? Rose started last night over Elfrid Payton. If that means anything, I don't think it really means anything at all. But so Rose started, and I know. I think Elfrid Payton's mother tweeted something out about it. I can look up that tweet. But yeah, that was interesting. Oh, that was game 3. But yeah, and I think did Elfrid Payton even play last night? I don't even think he did, to be honest. I don't think he did. But yeah, I think the Knicks are probably done. I hope the series goes far. Like I said, I really hope it does, but yeah, I think the Knicks making the playoffs as a Knicks fan, you have to be happy with this year. I mean, seeing a guy like Randle just kind of pop off in the regular season where you just didn't expect that. I kind of, looking in hindsight, it sucks that you did draft Obi Toppin just because he was essentially going to be your Randle replacement after Randle's contract ran out, and now you're probably going to re-sign Randle, I would assume. If not, you're going to probably trade him and get stuff back. But, Obi Toppin just hasn't been able to play as much as he would have liked. He only played 19 minutes last night. So, he was a guy that you thought, you didn't think you were going to make the playoffs, but he was a guy that you thought could have worked up to, that 30 minutes per game at the end of the regular season type of guy, and he'd be able to just start developing. He hasn't really had that. But yeah, I think this year for the Knicks is a success. I'm interested to see what Brandon thinks about the Knicks going into the offseason, because, I mean, the teams like the Knicks are going to be the interesting teams in the offseason to see what they do, how they draft, what they look to do in free agency. They're going to have money, I would assume. They don't have they don't have any max contracts or anything. So we'll see how the offseason works out. We'll see kind of, what happens to the big guys. I mean, Kawhi's not going to go there, I don't think, and he's a guy that could leave the Clippers. Looking at the series though, assuming they win the series, it's not a safe assumption, but assuming they do, I don't think he loses. But if they lose, then he might. I don't know that he goes to New York, but yeah, other series is Jazz Grizzlies. Utah's up 2-1. I like Utah to win the rest of the series. I'm going to keep it short for them. But if Mitchell plays well, which he did game 3, I expect the Jazz to kind of clean it up and win in 5 or 6. Philly has a 3-0 lead over the Wizards. They play tonight at 7. I expect them to finish it off, if not in 5 or 6. 6 if somehow the Wizards win 2 games. I don't think they will, but yeah. Trailblazers Nuggets is a series I can talk about. It's a close series. Again, it's another best of 3 with the Nuggets having 2 games at home and the Blazers only having 1. Last game, Michael Porter Jr. didn't really play well at all. I hope he rebounds because I'm a big MPJ guy. He was a guy that was kind of, he's a guy that I think can eventually be on an all-NBA team. He was the number 1 high school recruit a few years back. I think that was 2018. I don't remember what class that was. But yeah, he was the number 1 high school recruit. Kind of got injured, a back injury. He fell to 14. I think the Nuggets drafted him. He's a guy that I think can be a really good player. I think he can be a fringe top 20 player. I really do. I think he could maybe even be better if he picks it up defensively and even gets slightly better offensively. He has it offensively. If he can pick it up defensively and, pick it up and get slightly better offensively and just continue to develop, he's a guy that can be the number 2 on that Nuggets team. You could have Jokic as your 1, Porter as your 2, and Jamal Murray as at 3. I think this is a team that could be insane. Or, you could even go with Jokic as your 1 and then MPJ and Murray as your, 2A, 2B or whatever. But yeah, it's a super interesting series. I think whichever team wins is going to be a tough matchup for the Suns and Lakers. I think these teams are, they're going to make the Suns or Lakers earn that series win. I think the Suns and Lakers would win, but I think it's a series that they're fighters. They're tough teams. They're playoff tested. They've been in the playoffs before, as compared to like a team like the Suns. At least they're gonna make them earn it. I think the Nuggets are probably a slightly tougher matchup, even without Jamal Murray, just because Jokic is the MVP. He's just such a dominant player. He didn't play well either last night. But yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be a close series. I like the Nuggets to probably win in 7, but again, if Lillard goes off and Lillard has a game, then who knows? Lillard also didn't. He only had 10 points, 10 assists, 8 rebounds last game. We'll see what happens in Game 5. Powell had like 30 points or 28 points, 29 points or something like that. So Powell had a game himself. We'll see how that looks. They play tomorrow at 9. Today's games are the Celtics and Nets at 7:30. Or no, that's tomorrow. But today's Jazz, Grizzlies, and 76ers, Wizards. So kind of, underwhelming games for today. But yeah, that's pretty much it, though. That's kind of all I wanted to talk about. Bucks Heat, I kind of talked about that already. That's pretty much it. We'll be back probably within the next couple days. Me and Brandon will be. It'll be interesting to see what happens since in between now and then. I'm interested to see Brandon's reactions as a Knicks fan. We'll probably be talking about more NFL and MLB stuff soon. It's just been so, NBA playoffs, it's been pretty hype. We may even bring in a quick NHL minute at some point. I'm not sure if Brandon wants to talk about NHL or anything, but that's something we could talk about as well. Any ideas or suggestions for what you guys want to see from us, feel free to drop that down below in the comments or whatever. But yeah, I will be back within the next couple days. Description stuff, read it. TikTok, social medias, Instagram, Twitter, all that type of stuff. Feel free to check it out. Goodbye.